billion. Please include in your comments how you will reprioritize the budget for those most in need. For example, seniors and those of low income.
Well, I tell you, that's a handful. And looking over the budget, that would be the first thing that I would want to do, and get with Courtney Ruby, our auditor, and work to see where money's being spent and money's being actually given to different departments and whatnot, and seeing whether or not those departments are needful now during these times that we have, reprioritizing the whole thing about the finances and giving the money to the most needed and the most people that are suffering at this particular time, especially due to the COVID-19 virus that we have. And I would work to try to create a better way of trying to finance the people that are in need the most, and trying to get collaboration with different organizations to work with us to try to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to live safely and effectively in the city of Oakland. And I would work toward trying to figure out how we can redo the retirement system so we can make sure that those that have worked for years for the city of Oakland would have the retirements that they deserve, because I think it's very important that we do that. If we look back at defunding the police with some of the monies we're spending for them with different parts of coverage that they've been doing for way too long, I think we can give some of that coverage to other agencies and other groups, and we can focus that money, redirect that money to causes that are in need. Maybe even put some more to the retirement fund, so the people that have worked the hardest for years would be able to relax in their golden years and enjoy their retirement. Thank
you. Next, the same question to Mr. Clay. If you'd like me to repeat it, I can.
Would you please?
Yes. What are your priorities for the city's budget? How will you deal with the unfunded pension liability now approaching $1.5 billion? Please include in your comments how you will reprioritize the budget for those most in need. For example, seniors and those of low income.
Thank you. I appreciate the question, because I mean, our budget really controls so much. A budget tells us what our priorities are, and we absolutely need to make sure that we're taking care of the most underserved and those most in need. So I would take a very close look at our programs and make sure that we're measuring the impact in a way that really is efficient and effective. I think that we haven't done a good job of that. We have right now a lot of our service deliveries to people who are needed in the community are done individually by separate nonprofits and places of faith. And there's ways that we can scale that with enterprise software to make sure that we're getting the maximum number of funding for our people. We need to bring in more funding. We are coming out of, or we're going to be in COVID, and a lot of budgets are going to be stretched from the local budgets to the state and federal level. So we're really going to have to look at, make some tough choices, find out where we can add, take away from places like public safety, not public safety, but policing, into a better public safety model. 40% of our budget, of our discretionary budget going to OPD is just dysfunctional right now, with the need to fill affordable housing gaps and to need to create jobs. And that's where our focus should be in the budget, is making sure that we have programs that work, we provide affordable housing, and that we're able to build an economic job base for East Oakland. Thank you.
Thank you. The same question for Mr. Tatman. Again, if you'd like me to repeat it, I will.
No, thank you. I had a question pretty much down pack, especially being that I'm actually a budget commissioner on the City of Oakland Budget Commission. So this is something that I see every time we meet, and even when I'm studying the budget, some of the situations as it relates to our budget that we're currently in. The unfunded liabilities, people in need. It's simple. We need new revenue sources. year over year, Oakland is up when it comes to revenue that's coming in, but all the expenditures we have in place is draining the budget. As it relates to the unfunded liabilities, we need a revenue stream that's consistent. If you look within a budget, you see that a lot of the revenues for the unfunded liability is a one-time revenue source. In order to tackle this, we need to make sure we have a constant stream of revenue to address the unfunded liabilities. Now, in the short term, when it comes to giving more for those in need, we could use some of the funding from the OPD budget so we can reallocate it to programs that help the community. I'm talking about wraparound houses. I'm talking about programs to help with job training. And we must go through every department and check for efficiency and start the streamlining of services to help spend our money more efficiently so we can use that money for those in need. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question to Marcy Hodge. I can repeat if you'd like.
I think I have the gist of it. I have some notes here. We are certainly in the midst of a pandemic which has changed the dynamics of all economies across the world. And so the city of Oakland will be challenged, as well as many cities around the world, with trying to figure out how to sustain our most vulnerable populations. Certainly, I would prioritize our seniors, those who are unhoused, those who need assistance and subsidies for rent so that they do not become homeless. We are facing a real challenge, and we've got to have business-minded people with the type of business acumen to sit at the table to ensure that we're able to budget accordingly and not cut so that our most vulnerable suffer. We have to prioritize the liabilities. I mean, for over 20 years now, we've been talking about unfunded liabilities from the city to the state of California across this nation. And so that's something that we definitely have to get underway. I propose that not only with unfunded liabilities, we have to get a handle on really lobbying the federal government for more funds so that we can really work to reprioritize the challenges that we have. But we will be in a post-COVID dynamic, and we've got to be able to sit down and figure out ways in order to we've got to bring in more revenue, more business is going to be a priority for me.
Thank you. Same question to Ms. Reed. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
We've got to prioritize keeping the budget balanced. That was a tough time for us, and every dollar we know is stretched. But we've got to keep our employees working during these difficult times. We've got to ensure that we maintain the critical essential services like fire, wildfire protection, our library and senior services for those who are most vulnerable. We've got to make sure that we keep people safe and healthy with enough sufficient PPE for our workers, and even including our grassroots organizations who are serving our community on the front line and making sure that our community has what it's need. We've got to make sure that we keep people housed, that we continue to invest those dollars in public safety measures. So I support reallocating funding from OPD for those critical programs that I just mentioned, including youth, workforce, and job opportunities. I support the proposed progressive tax discussions that are moving forward through the Blue Ribbon Tax Force. I support Prop 15 and that $715 million annually coming back into our community. I support the wealth tax, AB 2088. I support how we allocate the $40 million that the appellate courts just gave us back through the arbitrator's decision on the Warriors. And as it relates to our PFARBs, our OPEBs, our unfunded liabilities, that's going to be critically important. I applaud the city council adopting the OPEB funding policy last year that set comprehensive goals for us.
There's going to be another question.
I'm sorry.
Can everybody mute, please, who is not? Please mute if you're not speaking. Thank you.
As it relates to our unfunded liabilities, I applaud council adopting the OPEB funding policy. It set comprehensive goals. It set a funding mechanism, a reporting component to help us manage among other items, the 183 million PFERBs and the 840 million OPEB obligations. We've got to do all of that and making sure that perhaps a small percentage of every new general purpose fund dollar generated is dedicated to the OPEB trust fund and are paying down our other unfunded liabilities.
Thank you.
We also, if I have a few moments, just make sure that we also in the midst of that improve our bond ratings and our long-term financial solids.
We now need to move to our next question, and it will be directed first. The question is, do you support Proposition 15? What other suggestions do you have for securing additional funding and other resources needed for the city? Mr. Clegg. You're muted, Mr. Clay.
Yes, sorry about that. And what was the second half? What other resources do I?
I needed to unmute.
Oh, sorry.
What other suggestions do you have for securing additional funding and other resources needed for the city?
Well, I think that as a city, we have to develop our job base and develop an economic base. My suggestion for that, East Oakland is perfect for the green economy. We're about to move into a transitional time, especially with the new administration coming in, where green jobs, $2 trillion is expected to be invested into our infrastructure and green jobs. And East Oakland is prime for that opportunity. We just have to be ready for it and set it up to make sure that our community gets those jobs, develops those businesses, including being suppliers to larger businesses. And that's something we can do. We have people who want those union jobs. We have the land that needs to be remediated and cleaned up in East Oakland. But that's something that the city historically has not been good about bringing businesses into Oakland, into the city limits for our community and for our residents. You always see retail going right outside the city limits. They take our tax base, but we don't get that benefit of the retail. So, you know, that's one of my priorities, is to make sure that we have a strong job base, which is something that we haven't had and something that District 7 hasn't been able to take advantage of. So, I mean, legislating for more funding in different ways and taxing, we need to look at other fees that don't hurt our homeowners through property taxes. So there are a number of different ways as far as fees for incoming residents who, you know, we have a lot of speculation in the city right now as far as our housing. So I would suggest a flipping fee and do other fees. Thank you.
Our next responder will be Mr. Tatman. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yeah, go ahead and repeat it just so I can make sure I get every point of it. Appreciate it.
Diane.
I'm sorry, I was muted. Do you support Proposition 15? What other suggestions do you have for securing additional funding and other resources needed for the city?
Thank you. This is my platform piece and has been my platform piece since I ran for mayor in 2018. And it's simple. First, let me address Prop 15. I support it. This is a chance to reassess businesses who's been getting away with tax murder, similar to the $750 that President Trump paid in taxes over the years, which is just robbing the people. So we will reassess current value for those businesses so we can support schools and we can put this back into the community. Short term. Whenever you're speaking about revenue, you always want to look at projections in long term. And this is something I've been preaching since day one. We need to utilize the space we have in the Hagenberger area and create a Hagenberger tourist zone. We have an international airport. We have a tram that leads from the airport to the BART station. And we have an abundance of land. My vision is to redevelop this area into a world-renowned travel destination which is $100 million, if not billion-dollar industry in the Bay Area. The foundation is there. This will have entertainment villages, sports museum, an educational center, a convention center, a taste of Oakland, and it will generate hundreds of thousands in tax revenue so we can help shore up the budget and create a multi-million, if not billion-dollar stream of income for the city of Oakland. And I'm working with the African American and Sports Entertainment Group to make sure that is possible.
Thank you, Mr. Tapman. Next, the question goes to Marcy Hodge. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I think I have it. Thank you. I do support the Prop 15 in terms of taxing businesses, but I don't want us to demonize businesses. As a business owner, many times people think that even 3 million is a lot of money. It really isn't when you're running a business. We have seen a pandemic that have essentially wiped out many businesses because they don't have the reserves. So we have to be mindful of burdening businesses, because when you're a business owner, you want to try to build coffers so that when these kind of incidents happen, you're able to sustain your people and your business. So it's important that we understand that whether it's a large business or small business, they sustain our communities. They are a part of the tax base. And we've got to begin to understand and create a lens so that we understand that they are also a part of the community. I do support it, but I also want us to look at green jobs, creating hubs so that entrepreneurs can begin to come into Oakland. We don't have any biotech. Many of my friends who are scientists have to work outside of Oakland. They live in Oakland, but they have to work outside of Oakland. When they're looking for jobs, they don't have jobs that they're able to access here. So we've got to really look at industries that will be growing and prospering over the next few years to help build our economy and our tax structure.
Thank you. Same question to Treva Reed. Would you like me to?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I absolutely support Prop 15. I've made calls. I've done social media posts. I'm out hitting the field working to ensure that we get out the vote and that we deliver on Prop 15. We've got to ensure that this measure passes to bring the stability that we need to our schools and communities, closing yet another loophole that I know that we worked on even when I was in then Assemblymember Skinner's office, making sure that we gain back the billions from wealthy corporations who've taken from our community for decades and have not paid their equitable share. We need to reinvest that $700 million annually back into our schools, tax relief for our struggling small businesses, permanent housing solutions, relieving homeowners and renters of increased tax burden, ensuring we've got emergency preparedness resources, transparency, even with those dollars on every dollar that comes in and goes out. We've got to figure out ways to ignite our local economy with supportive workforce opportunities. So we have that opportunity through the potential wealth tax, through the Census 2020 funding being leveraged, the progressive tax measure as those efforts continue, seeking more CARE Act funding, retaining and attracting 21st century industries in the STEM fields, clean tech, green corridors, redeveloping and rezoning the Coliseum area with some strong local hire, community benefits and jobs agreements, and collaborating more effectively with our county, state, and federal partners on other creative revenue solutions that benefit Oakland, that benefit our region, as we're all facing the incredible decline of transit occupancy and real estate transfer taxes. We can do more together.
Thank you. Finally, the question goes to Bishop Jackson.
Yes, well, I've looked at Proposition 15 and I don't think it's a good idea. I would probably say no on Proposition 15. And one of the reasons for it is Oakland hasn't been real friendly toward businesses for a long time. And taxing the businesses so high that would end up running them out, especially small business owners, especially Black and brown business owners who can't afford to hardly pay their taxes now. So I think we need to reconsider Proposition 15 and understand that we can't run our businesses away and at the same time want them to hire our people. I think we need to look at that in another perspective. I think we need to understand that we need the businesses and we need to do everything we can to be more business friendly so they would want to come and stay in the city of Oakland. Oakland has a bad reputation all over the world just about being anti-businesses, and we just can't afford to continue that because Our people need jobs, especially District 7. We need jobs. Our economy needs to grow. We need to present and produce more small businesses, because small businesses hire more Black and brown people than any other businesses. So that's why Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce is working hard to present and produce more businesses so we can hire more people in our community. So we need the businesses. We need them to be able to have tax breaks when it comes down to their commercial properties. So they will stay here, be happy here, and they will hire our people so we can make the kind of monies we need to make in order to stay in this city. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're muted. Diane, you're muted.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Our next question will be directed first to Marshawn Tatman. The question is, what measures should the city take to respond to our homeless crisis? What do you see that has been effective? What additional actions will you take to help people find stable and safe housing?
Thank you. Just real quick on the last question, this is a big business tax, so it won't tax small business. I just wanted to clarify that. We're looking at corporations when it comes to assessing the current value of their property. So when it comes to homelessness, this is something that I have a lot of experience in. I've been housing the homeless, housed nearly 200 families, and ran an emergency winter warming shelter. In the short term, we need to get the 4,000 plus off the streets. We need to provide temporary shelter. When I ran the emergency winter warming shelter, we used the church and we provided place for people to sleep. But we also need to focus on the core issues, which is two, livable wages and affordability. We need to make sure that people have enough money in their pocket from their paycheck so they can afford the cost of living. If we can't afford the cost of living, that means that the cost of living need to go down so people can stop drowning. We need to make sure housing remain affordable and stay affordable, and we need to build plenty of it. We need to build different type of housing. We need to use the area medium income, which is AMI, as most people know, 0 to 30% AMI, deeply affordable housing. 30 to 60% AMI, affordable housing, 60 to 90% market, and 80 to 120% work class housing, and work with landlords to get the rents down so everybody can move up in the chain so everybody can be housed.
Thank you, Mr.
You're muted, Diane.
You're muted.
It does it automatically. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Next, Marcy Hodge, same question.
Okay, and so in terms of what I feel the city should take, the measures that we should take in terms of responding to the homeless population, we have to work with the county because many of the homeless have challenges that will not allow them to remain stable, even if we were to place them in housing. Those consist of dual diagnosis sometimes and just single diagnosis, mental health and drug abuse challenges. And so we have to work with the county's departments, their mental health department and their drug abuse department to help to support those individuals who, even with all of the housing that we could give them, they would not be able to maintain any type of stable housing. So that's initially where I would want to focus on, because many others, we have programs in place with the county where it's transitional housing, permanent supportive housing that are helping many unhoused to find support, affordable housing. The city has to take measures in terms of responding to working with all of the entities, whether that's the state as well as the county. I propose that we also look at putting out RFPs and working with the county to do that, so that residential programs who want to expand or have programs where they can begin to bring in many of the mental health and families, women with families who are out on the streets, can bring them into their homes and help support and help to transition them and connect them to different programs that we have through the county as well as the city.
Thank you. Same question to Treva Reed.
Yes, I've lived with housing instability from my childhood into adulthood, and I serve on the board of SAHA, where I work now to take action to protect, to preserve, and prioritize housing as a human right with our city, our county, and our state leaders, community organizations. And so we know that we need to do more to ensure that those who are most vulnerable are housed and have the subsidies and a living wage income to remain housed. So some of the solutions to addressing the issues are making sure that we've got policies that are driven by community processes with our unhoused, our grassroots organizations, sitting at the table to make sure that our housing priorities are in line to achieve more than a 14% of that affordable regional housing goals that hasn't fully benefited any of us at that level. We've got to reallocate funding from public safety towards housing priorities with public land prioritized for public use, increasing the housing trust fund, expediting converting vacant buildings that we have for housing and approving more accessory dwelling units and expediting that process. We've got to fully ensure that those hotels that we have now through the county partnership with the state, that they are at full capacity. They are not at this time. We've got to increase funding sources to purchase underutilized hotels to fund our unhoused. We've got to launch the NOFA with our affordable housing impact fees now that those have been uncovered. We've got to expand the rental assistance, mortgage subsidies, emergency response programs during COVID, and even debt relief coming out of that. We've got to use the additional $10 million that's been allocated to buy permanent supportive housing in extremely low income units now. And we've got to remove barriers to make sure that those who need a fair chance to housing with a criminal record have that housing access now as well.
Thank you. The question next goes to Bishop Jackson.
Yes, housing is a real problem. Affordable housing is a greater problem in the city of Oakland. And it's mostly, we can mostly see it in District 7, District 6, and other areas, but mostly in 6 and 7. And the housing, the unhoused people that population is growing. And so we're not doing a lot. We're not doing too much of anything to abate the problem with housing. We have been working with 12 pastors with the Backbow ecumenical organization to put housing on church properties. And we're working toward getting funding to be able to do that so we can alleviate some of the housing problem in the city of Oakland. I've also built 59 units of affordable housing down at 94th Avenue. And I'm in the process of building 55 more units there of affordable housing. And I'm not talking about what we're going to do. I'm talking about what we're doing right now. I've talked to Related, and I've talked to the Housing Authority, and I've talked to the city of Oakland. I've got 7 more blocks to build affordable housing, and I'm in the process of securing finances in order to build. We need to build the housing instead of having meeting after meeting on what we're going to do about the housing. We need to supply housing stock so we can house the people. We have a shortage of housing, and that's just the way it is. We have a lot of housing that's sitting there vacant right now, unsecured. We need to resurrect the Housing Conservation Department, which Oakland successfully ran for a number of years. I know because I was an inspector in that program for 5.5 years. And we took these rundown houses, these houses that you see in our community too much, and we refurbished them, rehabilitated them, and put people in them. We could do that.
Thank you. Mr. Clay, same question.
Yes, we've experiencing a massive homelessness crisis that has been years in the making. We have 4,000 homeless at the last count, and it's expected that has grown 50% in the last 2 years. So I have a 3-pronged strategy on how to deal with providing more housing and making sure we take care of our unsheltered population. One, we have to stabilize our housing. As a community housing attorney, that's the work I did. I personally work with individuals, nonprofits fighting against foreclosures and evictions. I appeared in court every day helping keeping people housed and starting new programs for people who couldn't afford attorneys. And that's the type of thing that we have to do moving forward. We're coming to a foreclosure cliff where our homelessness population could easily double over the next few years once these moratoriums around COVID for foreclosure and evictions expire. So we need to start having real conversations with stakeholders at multiple levels, from Alameda County, the host of purse strings for public health, to the state and federal level on how do we do this. You know, we bailed out banks, and we may need to figure out a structure where we bail out our families, because we cannot keep on not doing things. The second part is we have to strengthen our capacity for necessary interventions. Our homelessness, you know, sometimes they can't go get resources because the services are someplace else than where their stuff, where their pets are. And so we have to address that. And the third solution, we absolutely have to increase our supply of housing using city-owned land, various housing development tools like community trust and other pieces. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clay. Our next question will first be directed to Marcy Hodge. Here is the question. What advice and help would you give to the mayor and the new police chief to fix the chronic problems of the Oakland Police Department? What ideas or models from other jurisdictions would you bring to that discussion as part of the newly formed task force on re-imaging public safety?
I would want Oakland to lead the effort nationally with my proposal to begin requiring officers to hold a $1 million bond. The city many times is faced with having to pay or settle out of lawsuits because of actions, inappropriate actions of the police force individuals. And so I believe that hiring and making them insurable to maintain their employment of a $1 million bond is going to change the dynamics of the police force. We've got to realize that the police force is one of the police unions are some of the most powerful unions in this nation. And the only way to really get a hold of the individual who is working under that kind of premise that they have the support and backing of a police union is to really identify the individual and that mindset. We have to change the paradigm. And I believe that a bond that requires any Oakland officer to be employed must maintain $1 million bond. And anytime there's a lawsuit or anything, they have to pay out of that bond whatever the settlement is. And then we need to start there in order to really change the mindset of our officers, to put the responsibility back on them.
Thank you. Ms. Reed, please respond to the question. I can repeat it if you'd like.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Certainly. What advice and help will you give to the mayor and the new police chief to fix the chronic problems of the Oakland Police Department? What ideas or models from other jurisdictions would you bring to that discussion as part of the newly formed task force on re-imaging public safety?
Yes, so I think, first of all, we got to be honest that we've got our own tarnished history of unlawful police misconduct, brutality, murder at the hands of law enforcement. And so we have to work with them to transform our police culture that's rooted in this systemic racism, that corruption, and make sure that we come out of federal oversight and looking at those areas that we've not maintained compliance to come into compliance, supporting certainly Measure S1 and the work of the Police Commission, supporting the efforts with the task force to reimagine public safety's goal to divest from the police budget and reinvest those funds to support the alternative community public safety plans that we've been talking about that also limit the power that's caused some of the harm and unjust practices. We've got to strengthen the police policies that reduce the use of force, that make police reports accessible and available, the misconduct reports. There has to be transparency and accountability. I believe that where we have with the budget of only allocating $14 million is not enough, or divesting $14 million is not enough. And so we've got to make sure that we achieve that goal of divestment up into 50% into some of those alternative areas. Richmond has the Operation Peacemaker. They've done an incredible job of transforming their outcomes, investing in violence interrupters. I serve with the Youth Alive Advocacy Committee, and we work on those efforts now with the city, state, and county officials on making sure that those violence interrupters can assist us with violence intervention, prevention, healing, and trauma care. We've agreed to the macro pilot, and that's something that's going on in Oregon that I fully support, that we invest in those pilots so that they're beyond a pilot, but they're ongoing efforts that are lasting towards the change that we need to transform our department and holding the mayor and the police accountable.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Next, Bishop Jackson.
Yes, thank you. First of all, we need to stop looking for another police chief outside of the Oakland Police Department and hire one from within. Lauren Armstrong has been there for centuries and he's done a wonderful job. He's a deputy police chief. And I think he needs to become the new chief because he knows his way around. He knows everybody. He knows the community. Everybody loves him. And he's a better man to get rid of the monitor, which we're paying $2 million a year for a monitor who comes to this city once a month and makes money off of all of us taxpayers. Talking about taking some money to do some other things with, there's $2 million we can take away right there, going to the police department for a monitor who's not even really here. The other thing is we can go to the Commission of Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. I've talked about this for the past 8 years, tried to get Gene Kwan, tried to get the other leaders. I've even talked to Larry Reed about getting Commission of Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. Every major law enforcement agency have what we call CALEA, Commission of Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. Highway patrols got it. Hayward police officers got it. And they never have the problem that Oakland had. It was only costing $500 when Gene Kwan was mayor, and I begged her to see about getting it. I talked to the people, they were ready to come into Oakland. She said it costs too much. No, what costs too much is all of these lawsuits that go against us all the time, officers doing the wrong thing. They train officers, work with them, regardless of what color they are, to make sure that they do the right thing. That's what we need.
Thank you. Mr. Clay, please respond to the same question. I can repeat it if you'd like.
No, I think I have it. Thank you. So as far as our public safety and advice to the mayor and whatever police chief that we choose, I think that we have to change the culture. We have to have real community engagement around what a safe community looks like and how to create it. You know, that's the one constant everywhere I go, whoever I talk to, is people want to feel safe and where they live and where they work. And so although we can take a close look at the budget, the organizational structure, we have to really delve into the culture of Oakland Police Department and get an understanding of what needs to be changed. Cutting the police department's budget by 50% doesn't change the culture of policing in Oakland. We've been under a consent decree for 17 years and the majority of current officers were hired under that time. And the culture still hasn't changed. People don't feel safe and don't feel like they're getting the services that they deserve. So as a solution, we need to, one, incentivize good officers in the hiring, the promotions, and the decision-making areas. That's not something we do. We need to have character background checks for new and lateral officers. This is also not something we do. We need to create a civilian internal investigative unit, because I don't understand how we can change the culture if only the police investigate the police for wrongdoing. And then we need to have ongoing procedural justice training and cultural community training interaction classes for our officers to stay in Oakland Police Department. And there's some things that are mandated as far as costs under the federal settlement agreement. So we may need to look at that and see if we can petition and renegotiate to see that we fix some of those things and make sure that we're on track. But there's a lot of things we need to change in the culture of policing.
Thank you. Mr. Tatman.
Thank you. First and foremost, we do need to change culture when it comes to OPD. I support the measure to strengthen the police commission, measure S1. I also support the public task force to help reimagine OPD. And my vision is a community free from police harassment and brutality, implicit bias, racial profiling, killings, outdated and dangerous tactics and procedures. And we will accomplish this by new training, removing qualified immunity so you can actually sue the police. This is a federal push right now with Senator Booker out of New Jersey, who is actually pushing for this so we could hold police accountable. I was always told you hit them in their pockets, it'll help change behavior. We need an update on policy. We need to incorporate and mandate community policing, standards and enhancements. We need to hire from within the community so people can serve in the community that they came from which will help build back up trust. And we also need to hire a lost opportunity with Chief Outlaw in Oregon, who is an Oakland native, a strong African-American woman chief that is leading up there where we need her talents back at home. We need to work with community organizations and communities that have years of building back trust and make sure that it's a trust level there when dealing with the OPD and community.
Thank you.
Outlaw is now in Baltimore, Maryland.
The next question will be directed first to Treva Reed. This is the question. Considering Oakland voted overwhelmingly in 2016 to establish an independent police commission, how do you see Measure S1 impacting the desire on the part of the community? How will it enhance or support productive outcomes for the work of the police commission?
Yes, I support ballot measure that's before us now, and glad that OPOA has also come alongside to ensure that the goals of our police commission and their strong independent oversight are met with the staff that they need to rewrite OPD's use of force policy, as I shared before, to make sure that we enforce constitutional policing standards. There has to be accountability and transparency with life safety outcomes that keep us in compliance also with our state AB 32. We've got to work with the commission to ensure that there are proactive, extensive community involvement with trauma-informed policing. OPD has the new OPD Cares. They've got to show up in ways that show the community that they care. And that's going to take some real intentional efforts, listening to our community and having public accessibility in the process. So I support the work of the commission. I support the partnership with the task force to reimagine public safety goals, to divest from the police. I support funding our violence interrupters training to mediate the threat of potential crime. I support the efforts under the commission to make sure that we invest in jobs, equitable education paths, drug treatment, substance abuse programs, mental health services, social workers, a universal healthcare system, affordable housing, ensuring that even our sex trafficked victims have care and that there's trauma care for them, civilianizing special events administration in other areas, and funding the Department of Violence Prevention. We have our own history and we've got to do better. And I believe that the work of the commission, the strong work and the leadership that they've already established will help us to continue to progress in that area. There are 4 candidates that they have the opportunity to present before us and the mayor. And I trust that those candidates will be candidates that will be able to work with us and ensure that their department has that ongoing trauma-informed and cultural competency training that's needed to keep them at the forefront of how they need to be interacting.
Thank you. Our next responder is Bishop Jackson. I can repeat the question if you'd like.
Please.
Considering Oakland overwhelmingly in 2016 voted to establish an independent police commission, how do you see Measure S1 impacting that desire on the part of the community? How will it enhance or support productive outcomes for the work of the police commission?
Thank you. I had an opportunity to work with the commission and a part of them with an ad hoc committee on the use of force with the police department. I sat on that board making decisions about how the use of force should be done and working with them on that. And I certainly agree with S1. I think the commission is right on. I think Regina Jackson is doing a great job as the president of the commissioners. And I just believe that, again, I want to go back to the commission of accreditation for law enforcement officers, agencies, because the training that they need cannot come from within. It has to be from an outside group. And this training, I'm telling you, will cause that old boys culture to disappear just about overnight because it's accountable. Matter of fact, our sheriff's department, Sheriff Greg A. Hearns, he's a stickler for this we call it CALEA, Commission of Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. He's a stickler for it because he believes in it. And I'm telling you, it will change the face of our police department. And working with the commissioners working with it, working with Ceasefire, I'm telling you all together, and working with other groups that's working with the problems that we've been having for too long in the city of Oakland, I think we would have a great police officer, and hiring from within the city, as was already said, hiring from within the city. I'm hoping and praying that the mayor make the right decision of these 4 that the commission is bringing to her, because I recommended once before to her who I thought would be a great commissioner, and she said, thanks for your opinion.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Clay, will you respond? I can repeat the question if you'd like.
That's okay. I do support Measure S1. I mean, as I've said before, I think community engagement, civilian accountability to a civilian commission is something that's absolutely necessary and required to help change the culture, which is what I think is sort of the basis for the police brutality and the past historical practices of OPD that have been anti-community. And that's what we need to change. So I support the commission task force to reimagine public safety and the community involvement. I just want to make sure that when we do that community engagement and that re-envisioning, that we go wide enough, because there's so many people who are impacted by the results and by the actions of the police in Oakland. And this is what it's been historically. You asked before about models elsewhere that we could use. Ceasefire is a model that was, sort of not created here, but really perfected here. And that's something that we need to scale along with community policing, making sure that we incentivize them living and staying in our community here. But we have to have more community involvement in what our public safety system looks like. It's the only way it's going to work, or nothing will change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clay. Next, the question goes to Mr. Tatlin.
Thank you. Yes, I do support Measure S1, as I alluded to earlier. And here go the reason why. And the key word is independence from the city administrator, in which I feel is needed. A budget with teeth is needed, given the police commission opportunities to hire outside experts and attorneys is critical when you're trying to have transparency and show the public that government will not meddle in the community business when it comes to addressing some of the issues that have been long with OPD. We're going back to the writers 20 years ago. All the misconduct cases as recent. We're talking about the scandal with, she's a good friend of mine, Celeste Guad. We're talking about accountability, and this commission will allow for the officer, if independent, to be held accountable for the actions that they cause to the community, which in my lifetime has been traumatizing. This all comes down to funding and training, in which you're hiring from within the community. And Bishop Jackson, you're right. It is Baltimore. I got confused because all the cheap opportunities Outlaw has been given besides in Oakland. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, the question goes to Marcy Hodge.
Okay, great. Oh, no, you don't have to repeat.
Okay.
So that we understand that the commission, that the city, we voted in 2016 to install a independent police commission. I believe that the work is yet to be done, and we need to continue that work, I believe, and support S1 because it will give the opportunity. Most importantly, it will give us the Inspector General's office. And I believe that's most paramount, to have an independent Inspector General. As a former elected official for Peralta, we would hire and bring someone from the outside to investigate things that we needed to really get down to the nitty-gritty of what was going on. And it worked quite efficiently for us to really find out what the challenges were. Also extending the time for the CPRA is important because when they are investigating, we really have to ensure that we're getting all of the information and compiling as much of the investigative data that we can. The commission thus far has, I believe, has worked well, and to give it additional powers and to give the Inspector General to add that piece to the body of trying to change the Oakland Police Department is going to be important. What I believe also is that we have to ensure that we're doing enough culture training as well. I support Oakland trying and working as best they can to hire from within, from the city, because when you know the officers, when officers know the community, you have less incident rates of police misconduct. And so I support it. I also support just, again, the bond where we're insuring individuals with bonds and they themselves have to be insurable. I think that's a game changer.
Thank you. Now it's time for the candidates to respond to the audience's questions. Tamuri, will you please begin with the attendees' questions?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
So I'd like to start off with the first question from the audience. District 7 goes from the Bay to Skyline. Understandably, attention and resources have been focused on commercial development and providing resources to the higher density and more needy flatlands. The South Hills of Oakland have received very little attention or help by our current council members and hasn't responded to any of our concerns. How will you address the needs of the South Hills, which has very different issues from the flatlands, such as wildfire danger, inadequate police response, and poor public transportation to businesses? This question, we could start with Bishop Jackson, would be great.
Yes, thank you. I would just like to add on the last question, the fact that I have worked with all 10 police chiefs for the past 10 years, every single one of them, from Chief Samuels all the way to Chief Kirkpatrick. So I just wanted to throw that in. But yes, we know that the district has not been served very well, especially within the last 8 years. We've had a hard time with getting any kind of services in District 7. So they don't need to feel bad in that area that they're not getting services. The services are not being given to anybody too much in District 7 when it comes down to potholes, when it comes down to, lately I've seen a few potholes being filled up, but the point of it is, it's been so long that we haven't had anything. And I think the main reason that we've been neglected is, first of all, our city councilman doesn't have an office in our community. First thing I want to do is put an office in our community so I'm accessible to you with your problems. And I'm going to make sure that we stay with those problems until we get them abated. The other way I'm going to do is make sure that when we go down to City Hall, that I want all of you to go with me. I don't want to be down there by myself. I want you to come with me so we can show that we're a District 7, we're a district that's together with the issues and problems that we have. And I think the city is too long worked with this concept of squeaky wheels get the grease. We're going to squeak so loud, we're going to get all the grease we need. And that's what I plan on doing when I become the city councilman for District 7. And I'm going to tell you, every problem we have is abatable. Every problem we have in District 7 is, I don't care what area you live in.
Thank you, Bishop. I appreciate that. Aaron Clay, if you could answer the same question, would you like for me to repeat the latter part?
Yes.
Okay, absolutely. How will you address the needs of the South Hills, which has very different issues from the flatlands, such as wildfire danger, inadequate police response, and poor public transportation to businesses?
Yeah, so I mean, I agree. District 7 is the largest district in the city, and we have a number of different communities and they have different issues. We do have issues just as being underserved generally across the board, but there are different issues that you see. So wildfire management is something that we definitely need to, because it still falls under public safety. So we need to re-envision for all our communities what that public safety piece looks like, because I think that's the one constant. So where it may be gun violence and we need more spot shotters in one area, including the hills, because they are shooting up there. We also need wildfire management in the hills, but not necessarily in other places. So I would, as a solution, one, I would make sure to have twice monthly meetings of sort of a community improvement meeting and that would circulate, rotate in all of the different precincts to make sure that the community's voices are being heard and being taken to City Hall. I would also have an office in the district. I think that's absolutely necessary. We're the farthest away from City Hall, and it shouldn't be required for our residents to have to make that journey to file a complaint or to have a talk or even see their council person. So I think that needs to be a requirement. But we really have to engage our community and find out what those different needs are. So that may mean increasing participation, incentivizing people to participate in their NCPC meetings with the Oakland Police Department so they can directly talk about their needs. But, like I said, different needs for different places, and we have to address them all if you're going to be an effective council person. And that means talking to as many people and reaching out the easiest way possible for the community. And let's stop making it difficult for the community to get results.
Thank you, Candidate Clay. The same question for Marshawn Tapman. Would you like for me to repeat the question?
I think I got it, and thank you for the opportunity to answer this question. First, I just would like to say, I feel we need to put satellite offices throughout D7. So I will have 3, one near the Saliandra border, one in the South Hills of Oakland, and one near the Coliseum, and make sure that it's staffed at least 3 days out the week. In case somebody have issues, they can go right in that office and get it addressed. Second, I will actually convene meetings weekly. Look, I don't plan to govern behind the desk. I plan on doing what I'm already doing right now, is getting out in the community and going to the most affected areas of the community. Now, as far as the South Hills, as it relates to all the other parts of the Oakland Hills, this is an equity issue. And this is a similar issue seen in the flatlands of D7, not addressing certain needs of D7, whether it's in the flatlands or in the hills. In this case, when we're talking about fire danger, we need to do routine maintenance when it comes to trimming back the trees and getting non-native trees out of here, like the eucalyptus trees, which is highly flammable, that's in the Oakland Hills right now, lining the roads. We need to make sure that we push for more transit routes throughout the hill to make sure that there's multiple routes people can get home with, and throughout the night, since people, we want to go green, we got to provide the opportunity for people to travel with transportation that's reliable. And we need to make it equitable. Whatever you see in the other parts of the hill, plain and simple, it's black and gray. We need to see this in the South Hills of District 7. Thank you.
Thank you, Candidate Tapman. Same question also for Marcy Hodge. Shall I repeat?
No, I haven't. Thank you.
Awesome.
I would say that we definitely have had representation that has been unresponsive, and the Reid administration just has failed District 7 miserably. I would, because, first of all, because I traverse between 3 houses every day, I have a residential programs. 2 of the homes are in the flatlands and I live in the hills. I'm on the ground, and so I know what the challenges are from the hills to the flatlands. And I would not propose to have any additional offices in the District 7 area. I believe that the representative has to utilize the time by leveraging technology. We're meeting today through Zoom. I would propose by having 2 monthly meetings with myself at the top of the month and at the latter end of the month with staff. And so anytime that residents need to check in, face to face through technology, we can do that. It's no need in wasting additional funds to, secure office space when people simply want their needs met. The other challenge is also, with our current person, you don't necessarily get your emails responded to or phone calls. And so I would institute for my staff is that we return phone calls and emails within 24 hours and be responsive to the needs of the people. Historically, the hills have not always wanted transportation aside from, the local school hours, during school hours to, bring the kids back and forth. So if those needs have changed, that's something that we definitely need to look at. In terms of forest fires, I support, fire forest management. And if that's something that the state is willing to assist with, we can definitely jump on board with that.
Thank you, Candidate Hodge. And lastly, Treva Reid, should I repeat the question?
Thank you. I'm good. District 7 has to benefit from every area, including the hills and the flatlands, from the budget actions, the policies, the investment that we have to protect, to preserve, and prioritize the needs of residents wherever you live. And that takes place when you come together with community, when you proactively convene community discussions and meet community where they are, connecting with the HOAs, the NCPCs, and whatever existing organization exists. One, finding out what those and who those organizations are and making sure that you've got the contact information to establish what that cadence will be and how you come together. But I fully support making sure that you have the ongoing investment in actions and having a responsive updates and transparency in how you are communicated with and how you partner with your city council member. We've got to ensure that in the hills, that the bonds that we have already approved, that they improve your pedestrian and traffic safety for the intended purpose that you voted on. We've got to make sure that you've got equitable and ongoing maintenance of your roads through the budget and Measure Q dollars that we've already voted on. We've got to collaborate with Oakland Fire Department. I've been endorsed by them. I've got their sole endorsement. Working with them, the emergency preparedness managers on wildfire prevention, mitigation, and safety measures, having community discussions. I lead those community discussions now, and we've got to hold PG&E accountable. We've got to come to the table with Alameda County OES to ensure that equitable resources are also prioritized and training is prioritized for our community, from the hills to the flatlands. I serve as the Alameda County OES for my company, the liaison. I work on all of the issues as it relates to community wildfire safety, prevention, updates, funding charitable organizations, particularly those more vulnerable organizations like our seniors, like our low-income residents, to make sure that from the hills to the flats, our community is more prepared and safe, and the threat of wildfire is mitigated. And the issues that come up in the Hill as it relates to inspection and enforcement are addressed more proactively and responded to. Having those wildfire partners at the table for those discussions.
Thank you, Candidate Reed. We appreciate that. Diane, am I turning this back over to you?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, Tamuri. Now we'll have closing statements from the candidates, and we will reverse the order that we started with. Each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. First closing statement will be from candidate Treva Reed.
Thank you, League of Women Voters and friends who are watching. I appreciate being invited. You know, I shared this before. I've never lived in a pandemic, but I've lived through some seasons of my life that I never thought that I would recover or live through, like many of us feel today. And it's with that spirit that I come to making sure that we work together more proactively in how we convene these kind of conversations virtually, while that's the opportunity, or on site, as I have been doing merchant walks and going to meet with community where they are to prioritize the support that they need. I will continue to advocate for courageous policies, equitable outcome to deliver and empower our residents and small businesses to thrive with real community-driven benefits, with housing stability, family sustaining job, healthy communities that we can thrive in and be safe in. And so I hope that you will join me and many others, including my neighbors and endorsers, to move East Oakland forward for us. You can find more information from me at readforoakland.com and see a list of my endorsers there. This is the time, this is now, and I believe that together we will be stronger together with moving the issues forward for more equitable outcomes. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Our next closing statement will be from Marcy Hodge.
Thank you again to the League of Women Voters, 100 Black Women, and other contributors of this forum. Thank you so much for the open door. I am proud to be here with these esteemed candidates. Although we are in competition, they are all great people and great contributors to our community. But ranked choice is very unique as it allows you to vote your number one choice, as well as your second choice, and so on. I'd like to thank my base for continuing to support me and making me your first choice. I'd like to keep you and keep me as your first choice, and I'd like to thank my supporters for taking this journey with me. However, if I am not your first choice in this ranked choice system, if you're voting for Bishop Bob Jackson, make me your second choice vote. If your first choice is Treva Reed, make me your second choice vote. If your first choice is Aaron Clay, please make me your second choice vote. If your first choice is Marshawn Tatum, please make me your second choice vote. Again, my base, I want to thank you for making me your first choice vote. But because this ranked choice system gives us multiple opportunities, I want you to remember you have a choice. And please go to www.hodge4oakland2020.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tatman, you're our next closing statement, please.
Thank you, League of Women Voters and the audience for watching tonight. I really appreciate it. Let me just start off by reiterating my platform. Reforming OPD, eliminating homelessness, eliminating homicide, creating affordable housing, bringing solid and sound, equitable economic development and opportunity. It's the only way we will move forward. I'm from Oakland, and my whole life I've seen the disparities, the inequities, the lack of caring for certain neighborhoods, the closing of businesses in deep East Oakland, the loss of hope, the dirty streets, the potholes, the crime, a lack of focus, innovation, and energy. This is nothing new. You start to ask yourself, is this by design? Look, I have extensive policy experience, governmental knowledge, the education program management skills, and a proven track record to succeed in whatever capacity. I will be your transformative, inspirational servant leader representing D7. Check out my website at votemarshawn.com, and thank you for this opportunity. And I really will appreciate your first place vote.
Thank you, Mr. Tatman. Next closing statement from Mr. Aaron Clay.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing and hosting this forum and letting me just speak to the community. My name is Aaron Clay, and I want to be your first choice for Oakland City Council for District 7. This is an important election, and it will really determine what our future looks like for ourselves and for our kids. As previously shared, my goal is to change East Oakland to a safe, healthy, vibrant community by one, prioritizing our housing for all our residents. Everybody deserves to have shelter. Reimagining public safety based on what the community's vision is, and creating a strong economic base so we can live and support our families here in Oakland. I want to keep East Oakland families in their homes and provide the means and process so residents can afford to live here. I've done that work. I would empower residents to imagine what it looks like to be safe in their own communities and work and create that version of public safety. And that's what I talk to the community about. I would host twice monthly meetings for community improvement to meet across the district to make sure that our residents' voices are heard and carried to City Hall. That's not happening now. I would launch an East Oakland Business Empowerment Center and Job Council to make sure we're getting the jobs and businesses that we deserve. We've been playing catch up for far too long. It's time to change that and start creating and building together. This is the vision and experience I bring to District 7. Thank you for your support. My name is Aaron Clay. You can reach me at clay4d7.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clay. And our final closing statement will be from Bishop Bob Jackson.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank Pat Rayburn for those wonderful emails, keeping me on track to be here tonight. And thank you very much. I just want to close by saying this. There was a poll done recently, and 62% of the people that live in D7, District 7, said that it is the worst, and that the resources that we have, the condition of our district is just the worst in the whole city. 62% people complaining about how bad District 7 is. So I don't care how we deal with it. We got to do something with the Reed dynasty. We got to deal with what's been happening all the time. And people come promising you all kind of things. But how many people are really coming with tangible proof and evidence that they've done anything in this city? I've been in District 7 for a long time. I plan on staying here. I live here. My first house was bought at 364 Clara Street. We got people that's on this forum right now who can't even tell you where they live, where they grew up, what high school they went to, because they don't live in Oakland. My point in saying it is, we need to go with Oakland. We need to go with people from District 7. We need to make sure that we put a leader in there that understands our community and the conditions that we've had for too long. I'm that leader, Bishop Bob Jackson. Vote for me as your number 1 or number 2 choice. Thank
you, Bishop Jackson. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Oakland, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Oakland Bay Area Chapter, and the 100 Black Men Bay Area, I want to thank the candidates for running for this office and for their participation this evening. I also want to thank the audience for attending and meeting the candidates. For further information about upcoming forums, the candidates, and ballot measures, please visit the League's award-winning and easy-to-use website, lwvoakland.org or votersedge.org/California. There you will find information about candidates and ballot measures and links to other sources and information about the upcoming election. If you want more information about the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Oakland Bay Area Chapter, visit our website at 100blackwomen.com. Members of the League of Women Voters do the hands-on work to safeguard democracy. While we never endorse a candidate, we are directly involved in shaping important issues to keep our community strong. If you would like to be involved with the men and women helping to make democracy work, it's easy to join the League. We encourage you to visit our website at lwvoakland.org. Visit us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Look for the League's Oakland Easy Voter Guide inserted in the October 14th edition of the East Bay Express. The deadline to register is October 19th. If you have moved or changed your name or wish to change your party affiliation since you last registered, you need to re-register by October 19th. Online voter registration is available at the Secretary of State's website, which is sos.ca.gov. Remember to vote by mail or at the vote centers, which will be open on October 31st for early voting. Encourage your family, friends, and neighbors to vote. We thank you for attending this evening. We thank the candidates. The forum is now concluded. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. Good night.
Good night.